perfectly thrown ball. And what do Mr. Judy do? Look at this.
Shedeur Sanders threw a perfectly placed, laser-guided, absolutely uncatchable for the wrong reasons football today at Cleveland Browns training camp. And the wide receiver on the other end of that throw let it fall right through his hands. Again. For what feels like the 100th consecutive time this camp. And the Cleveland Browns front office sat there, watched it happen, said nothing, did nothing, and kept right on pretending that Shedeur Sanders has a fair shot at winning this quarterback competition. This is NFL gossip, and today we are exposing exactly what this league does not want you to see. Because what is happening to Shedeur Sanders in Berea, Ohio right now is one of the most quietly devastating, deliberately overlooked, institutionally convenient situations in the entire National Football League. And the people who are supposed to be protecting this young man's opportunity, the coaches, the front office, the organization that drafted him, are either too cowardly, too compromised, or too financially handcuffed to do a single thing about it. Let me be completely clear with you from the jump. This video is not about tearing down Jerry Jeudy as a human being. This is about the cold, undeniable, tape-verified reality of what is happening to one of the most talented, composed, and genuinely impressive young quarterbacks to enter this league in years. Shedeur Sanders is being set up to fail. And by the end of what we are about to walk through together, you are going to understand exactly who benefits from that failure, and why the Cleveland Browns front office has every financial, reputational, and ego-driven reason in the world to make sure it happens. Stay with me, because this goes so much deeper than a dropped pass. The numbers from day 13 of Browns training camp tell a story that no amount of organizational spin can undo. Shedeur Sanders went 13 completions out of 21 attempts with a touchdown. 13 out of 21. With a touchdown. That is the performance of a quarterback who is winning a competition. That is the performance of a young man who is executing under pressure, going through his reads, delivering the football on time and on target, and doing everything that an NFL franchise could possibly ask of a rookie signal caller trying to prove himself. Now let me give you the comparison that the Cleveland Browns absolutely do not want you making. The other quarterbacks in that room, the ones who are supposedly competing for this starting job, are not putting up those numbers. They are not making those throws. They are not leading those 2-minute drives. Shedeur Sanders is doing all of it. Day after day after day, this young man shows up, puts in the work, and produces at a level that should make the decision to name him the starter the single most obvious, most straightforward, most defensible call Todd Monken could make. And yet here we are, day 13. And the Cleveland Browns still will not name their starter. But here is where it gets so much worse, because the conversation cannot just be about what Shedeur Sanders is doing right. It has to be about what is being done to him. And what is being done to him? Repeatedly, consistently, and with a frequency that has now moved well beyond the realm of coincidence, is that his wide receivers, and specifically Jerry Jeudy, are dropping his passes, not breaking them up, not getting out-muscled at the catch point, dropping them. Clean, flat, undeniable drops on throws that any NFL receiver should be securing with both hands. And that is not me being dramatic. That is not some clickbait hot take. That is simply what the tape shows. Think about what is really going on here. Shedeur Sanders goes through his progressions. He identifies the right receiver. He delivers the football with accuracy and timing. And then, nothing. The ball hits the ground, the drive stalls, the stat line takes a hit. And somewhere in a front office meeting room, someone who has a vested interest in Shedeur Sanders not winning this competition gets to point at an incomplete pass and say, "See? He's not ready." That is the machine. That is the structure. And Shedeur Sanders is trying to win inside of it, with one hand tied behind his back. Don't take my word for it. These are heavy hitters. Listen.
And I said this on the Overreaction Monday, that Monken cannot look everybody in that locker room in the eye and say, we're starting somebody else. If the team sees this kid is the guy, if this kid is the leader, if this kid has outplayed and outcompeted Deshaun Watson.
They said it, out loud, on the record. A perfectly thrown ball, and what does Jerry Jeudy do? He drops it, clean. No defender in his face, no traffic, no excuse. The ball is there, it is on target, it is catchable, and it ends up on the turf. Now I want you to sit with that for a second. Because this is not a one-time occurrence. This is not a bad day. This is a pattern so consistent, so reliable, so jaw-droppingly repetitive, that it has become the defining story of Cleveland Browns training camp. Every single practice, every single day. Something happens with Jerry Jeudy and a Shedeur Sanders target. And every single time it happens, it chips away at the public perception of a quarterback who is actually factually, demonstrably winning this competition on merit. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this before you answer it in your own head. If you are a wide receiver, a professional, highly paid veteran wide receiver, and your quarterback is going through his reads, going through the process, delivering the football accurately, and you are dropping those passes with the kind of regularity that Jerry Jeudy has shown this training camp, what does that say? What does that communicate to the rest of the locker room? What does that communicate to the coaching staff? And most importantly, what does it communicate to the front office that is watching every single practice rep with a clipboard and a predetermined conclusion? Because here is the thing about the Cleveland Browns situation that makes this so uniquely, so infuriatingly complicated. This is not just about a quarterback competition. This is about money. Enormous, franchise-crippling, legacy-defining amounts of money. And the moment you understand the financial architecture of what the Browns have built, or more accurately, what they have destroyed, everything that is happening to Shedeur Sanders starts to make a very different kind of sense. And it doesn't stop there, because the financial angle is only the surface layer of a problem that goes all the way down to the foundation of this franchise. The Cleveland Browns paid Deshaun Watson. And I want you to hold this number in your mind. They paid Deshaun Watson a fully guaranteed contract worth over $40 million per year. Fully guaranteed. That means that regardless of what Deshaun Watson does, regardless of what he produces, regardless of whether he ever takes another meaningful snap in the National Football League, the Cleveland Browns are on the hook for that money. Every single dollar, gone, committed, untouchable. Now think about what that means for Shedeur Sanders. Think about what it means for the people inside that building who signed off on that contract, who championed that deal, who staked their professional reputations on the idea that Deshaun Watson was the answer for this franchise. Because if Shedeur Sanders walks onto that field and proves, clearly, undeniably, in front of the entire country, that he is the better quarterback, then every single one of those people has to look themselves in the mirror and reckon with the catastrophic, ego-shattering reality of what they did. They blew it, completely, historically. At a cost of $40+ million a year. And human beings, powerful human beings with egos and job security and reputations to protect, do not like doing that. They will go to extraordinary lengths to avoid having to do that. And one of the most effective ways to avoid that reckoning is to make sure the young quarterback who is threatening to expose you never quite gets the clean opportunity to do it. Let me say that back to you in the harshest possible terms so you do not miss it. The Cleveland Browns front office has a financial and reputational incentive to ensure that Shedeur Sanders does not clearly, obviously, undeniably win this quarterback competition. Because if he does, the people who gave Deshaun Watson all of that guaranteed money look like the most incompetent, most reckless, most catastrophically wrong evaluators in the history of the franchise. Maybe in the history of the league. That is the context. That is the backdrop. That is the invisible weight that Shedeur Sanders is carrying into every single practice rep. And he is still going 13 out of 21 with a touchdown. And here is the part that is going to make your blood absolutely boil. The national media is not talking about this. The people who are paid to cover this franchise, who have access to the facility, who sit in those press conferences and ask those questions, they are not connecting these dots in any meaningful way. They are covering the quarterback competition like it is a fair, open, merit-based evaluation. Like there is no financial catastrophe looming over every single decision this organization makes. Like the dropped passes are just football. Like the delayed announcement of a starter is just coaching strategy. It is not just coaching strategy, it is organizational self-preservation. And Shedeur Sanders is the one paying the price for it. Don't take my word for it. These are heavier hitters, watch this, straight from their own mouths.
But I don't want to hear the $40-some million. That man got paid $40-some million. It doesn't matter. People get paid money. Look at Russell Wilson, bro. Russell Wilson got paid all of that money by Denver.
Let me say that back to you so the weight of it lands properly. The argument being made by people who watch this team every single day is that Todd Monken cannot look the entire Cleveland Browns locker room in the eye and tell them that someone other than Shedeur Sanders is starting this football team. Cannot do it because the locker room sees what the tape shows. Because the players on that field every day know who the leader is. They know who is going through reads, delivering the football, and making plays. They know who is winning. And yet Todd Monken sat in front of the media on day 13 of training camp and refused to name his starter. He said he would tell his players at a meeting that night. He has made his decision, his words, but he will not reveal it yet. I want you to focus on that specific framing. He has made his decision. He just won't reveal it yet. Not we are still evaluating, not the competition is ongoing. He has made his decision, which means the information exists, the conclusion has been reached, and the head coach of the Cleveland Browns is choosing, deliberately, consciously, strategically choosing, to withhold it from the public, from the media, and apparently from his own players until a private meeting behind closed doors. Why does a coach do that? Why does a coach make a decision and then choose not to announce it? There are a few possible answers. One is that the decision is genuinely complicated and he wants to communicate it to his players with care and context before it becomes a media story. That is the charitable reading. The other, and I want you to sit with this one, is that the decision is one that requires a very specific kind of management. A kind of management that does not hold up particularly well under public scrutiny. A kind of management that looks a lot better when it is delivered privately, in a controlled environment, where the reaction can be contained. Think about what is really going on here. If Todd Monken had made the obvious, merit-based, tape-supported decision and was naming Shedeur Sanders his starter, would there be any reason to delay the announcement? Would there be any reason to hold a private meeting? You name the guy who earned it. You call the press conference. You let the young man stand up there and answer questions. That is what a clean, confident, merit-based decision looks like. The secrecy tells you something. The delay tells you something. The carefully managed communication plan tells you something. And what it tells you is that, whatever decision Todd Monken has made, the Cleveland Browns front office does not believe it can survive unfiltered public exposure. And here is where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Because this is not the first time the Cleveland Browns have managed information in a way that seems specifically designed to complicate Shedeur Sanders' path forward. This has been the operating mode of this organization throughout training camp. Every day there is something. Every day there is a new wrinkle, a new complication, a new piece of organizational noise that lands directly in Shedeur Sanders' path and makes his road just a little bit harder, just a little bit more cluttered, just a little bit more uncertain. The dropped passes from Jerry Jeudy, the delayed starter announcement, the carefully worded non-answers in press conferences, the rotation plan for the preseason that splits playing time in a way that makes clean evaluation deliberately difficult. All of it, every piece of it, lands on the same side of the scale. And it doesn't stop there, because the rotation plan itself deserves its own conversation. Here is what Todd Monken revealed about the preseason plan. The starting quarterback in Chicago will play at least the first half. The second quarterback, the one who does not start, will play the third quarter. And then that order will be reversed the following week in Cleveland against the Buffalo Bills. Read that back to yourself slowly. The order will be reversed. The quarterback who starts in Chicago will not start in Cleveland. And the quarterback who does not start in Chicago will get the first half reps in Cleveland. I want you to think about what that structure does to a clean, honest, merit-based evaluation. If Shedeur Sanders starts in Chicago and plays brilliantly in the first half, which, based on everything we have seen this training camp, is not a far-fetched scenario, the organization can point to the structure and say, well, we have to give the other quarterback his first half reps in Cleveland. That was always the plan. The plan itself becomes the excuse. The predetermined rotation becomes the firewall between Shedeur Sanders' performance and the decision that performance should be forcing. That is a structure designed to protect a predetermined outcome. And the predetermined outcome is not Shedeur Sanders winning this competition on a clean, open, undeniable body of evidence. Which brings me to the thing nobody in the media will say out loud, the Russell Wilson parallel. Because we have been here before, not just in Cleveland, but in the broader NFL landscape. We have watched this exact movie play out with a different cast of characters, and the ending was just as ugly and just as expensive and just as damaging to the franchise that refused to make the obvious decision. Russell Wilson went to Denver. Denver gave him an enormous, franchise-defining, budget-consuming contract. And when it became clear, undeniably, embarrassingly, publicly clear, that Russell Wilson was not the answer for that football team, Denver did not immediately pivot. They did not immediately make the hard decision. They held on. They protected the investment. They protected the egos of the people who made the call. And by the time they finally let Russell Wilson go, still paying him by the way, still on the hook for that money, the damage to the franchise was severe, deep, and years in the making. Denver paid Russell Wilson to leave. Let me say that again. Denver paid Russell Wilson to go play somewhere else. They ate that money. They swallowed that contract. They absorbed that catastrophic, humiliating financial loss. And they did it because holding on to the wrong decision for too long always costs more than making the right decision early. The Cleveland Browns are staring at the exact same crossroads right now. They have a young quarterback who is winning every single day at practice, 13 out of 21 with a touchdown, leading 2-minute drives, building chemistry with receivers like Isaiah Bond, showing the kind of poise and accuracy and football intelligence that you cannot teach and cannot fake. And they have a $40+ million per year contractual obligation to a quarterback who is not in that competition. The money does not make the decision. The money never makes the decision. The performance makes the decision. The tape makes the decision. And every single day that the Cleveland Browns refuse to let the tape make the decision, they are choosing the Russell Wilson path. They are choosing the path that ends with them paying for 2 quarterbacks, winning with neither, and wondering how they got here. Don't take my word for it. Here is what the people on the ground at that training camp are saying. These are the voices closest to this situation.
I don't know what it is with Jerry Jeudy, but this Jerry Jeudy situation is looking real bad, man. I just feel like they're making it real hard for Shedeur to succeed. I just got to be honest, man.
They said it, out loud, on the record. The $40-some million does not matter. People get paid money. Look at Russell Wilson, got paid all of that money by Denver, and Denver sent him on his way and still paid him. The money is not the argument. The money has never been the argument. The money is the excuse that cowardly front offices hide behind when they do not want to make the right decision. And I need you to really absorb what that means for the Cleveland Browns in this specific moment. Because the people who are watching this competition every single day, the people with eyes on the practice field, the people who are not sitting in an executive suite trying to protect a balance sheet and a reputation, those people are saying the same thing. The money does not matter. The kid is winning. Give him the job. The Cleveland Browns front office is the only entity in this entire situation that seems determined to pretend otherwise. Let me take a step back and really break down what actually happened at the end of day 13, because this moment deserves its own chapter in this story. Because amid all of the dropped passes and the organizational noise and the carefully managed press conference non-answers, Shedeur Sanders did something at the end of that practice that I want every single person watching this to picture clearly. The drill is a 2-minute situation. The offense has to go down the field and set up a go-ahead field goal. 58 seconds left. The drive starts deep in their own territory. This is the kind of high-pressure, clock management, execution under duress moment that separates quarterbacks who are ready from quarterbacks who are not. And Shedeur Sanders steps into that moment and runs the offense down the field. And then on third down, with the drive on the line, with the field goal on the line, with the entire practice session building to this moment, he throws a ball to Isaiah Bond. And the reporter covering this practice described it in a way that I want you to hear clearly. The ball was wobbling. It did not look like it was going to get there. It was wobbling and wobbling and wobbling. And Isaiah Bond outstretched, dived for it and caught it, right on the mark. Now think about what that means. A quarterback who is supposedly not ready, supposedly still developing, supposedly in a genuine competition for his starting job, that quarterback just dropped a perfectly placed, beautifully timed, pressure situation football into the hands of a diving receiver to set up the go-ahead field goal. Wobbling or not, the ball was right on the mark. The reporter said it. The catch was made. The drive was completed. The field goal was set up. That is what winning looks like. That is what a franchise quarterback looks like. And the Cleveland Browns sent everyone home smiling, including Shedeur Sanders, and still refused to name their starter. 13 out of 21 with a touchdown. A game-winning drive in the 2-minute drill. Building chemistry with multiple receivers. Showing the kind of leadership and composure that has the entire locker room believing in him. And the Cleveland Browns front office is sitting on a decision they have already made but will not announce. One decision, one announcement. That is all it would take, and they will not make it. And here is the part of this story that the national media is absolutely, completely, inexcusably failing to cover. The enabler structure, because Todd Monken does not operate in a vacuum. He does not make these decisions alone. There is a general manager. There is an ownership group. There is an entire organizational hierarchy above the head coach that sets the parameters within which these decisions are made. And every single one of those people, every single layer of that organizational structure, has a stake in the outcome of this quarterback competition that has nothing to do with who is the better football player. The general manager who constructed this roster, who signed off on the Deshaun Watson contract, who built the offensive infrastructure around a quarterback who is no longer in the competition. That person's legacy is directly tied to what happens at the quarterback position. If Shedeur Sanders wins this job and thrives, it is a validation of the draft pick. But it is also an indictment of every decision that came before it. Every dollar spent, every trade made, every contract signed, all of it gets re-examined through the lens of what Shedeur Sanders proves he can do. And powerful people with long memories and fragile egos do not enjoy being re-examined. So what does the organizational structure do? It builds in ambiguity. It creates a competition that never quite resolves cleanly. It designs a preseason rotation that prevents any single performance from being definitive. It keeps the dropped passes from becoming a receiver accountability story and lets them quietly become noise in the Shedeur Sanders evaluation. It delays the starter announcement until the last possible moment. In a private meeting, behind closed doors, away from the cameras and the microphones and the public accountability that a press conference would demand. Every single one of those choices, every single one, serves the same institutional interest. And that institutional interest is not Shedeur Sanders winning this competition. Let me be completely clear with you about something. I am not saying that anyone in the Cleveland Browns organization has sat in a room and explicitly decided to sabotage Shedeur Sanders. I am not asserting that as a proven fact, because I cannot prove intent. What I am saying, and what the tape and the pattern and the organizational behavior clearly support as an opinion that every single person watching this has already formed, is that the structure of this competition, the management of this information, and the tolerance for what is happening with the dropped passes creates conditions that are uniquely, specifically, disproportionately harmful to Shedeur Sanders' chances of winning this job on a clean, fair, merit-based evaluation. That is not sabotage as a conspiracy. That is sabotage as a system. And systems do not need conspiracies to produce outcomes. They just need incentives. And the Cleveland Browns front office has every incentive in the world to produce an outcome that does not require them to look at $40+ million a year and call it the worst decision in franchise history. And if you can believe it, this is exactly where the whole thing gets even more damning. Because the preseason rotation that Todd Monken described is not just a competition management tool, it is a narrative management tool. Think about what it does to the public conversation. If the starter in Chicago plays brilliantly, and the second quarterback plays poorly in the third quarter, the story becomes about the starter, clean, obvious, decisive. But if the rotation flips the following week, and the second quarterback gets first-half reps against the Buffalo Bills, suddenly the conversation is muddied again. Suddenly there is new data to evaluate. Suddenly the decision that should have been obvious after Chicago needs to be reconsidered in light of what happened in Cleveland. That muddiness is not accidental. That muddiness is the product of a competition structure that was designed to prevent a clean, decisive, undeniable verdict. And the only person that structure hurts is the person who is actually winning. Shedeur Sanders, day after day, rep after rep, throw after throw, winning. Now let me give you my verdict. And I want to be very clear that these are my predictions, based on the evidence that is publicly available, the pattern of organizational behavior that we have documented, and the financial and reputational pressures that are shaping every decision this franchise makes. Prediction 1. If the Cleveland Browns name someone other than Shedeur Sanders their starter after this preseason, the backlash from the fan base and the broader football community will be immediate, furious, and sustained. The people who have been watching this training camp, who have seen the numbers, who have seen the highlights, who have seen the 2-minute drives and the touch passes and the leadership, those people are not going to accept a non-merit-based decision quietly. The reaction online has already been building, and it is going to get louder. Prediction 2. Jerry Jeudy's drop rate with Shedeur Sanders targeting him is going to become one of the most scrutinized statistical stories of this entire preseason. The people saying it was a pass breakup, the people trying to reframe the tape, are going to run out of runway very quickly because the tape does not support that reframing. It was a drop, clean, undeniable, and it was not the first one. Prediction 3. The Cleveland Browns front office is going to try to manage this story through the preseason by keeping the competition artificially alive as long as possible. They are going to use the rotation structure, the private meetings, the carefully worded press conference language, and the organizational noise to prevent any single moment from becoming the definitive verdict. But Shedeur Sanders is going to keep winning, and at some point, some specific, unavoidable, publicly visible point, the gap between what the tape shows and what the organization is willing to admit is going to become too large to paper over. And here is where I want to close the loop on the Russell Wilson parallel, because I think it is the single most important piece of context for understanding where the Cleveland Browns are headed. Denver held on to Russell Wilson for too long. They protected the investment. They protected the egos. They delayed the inevitable. And by the time they finally made the decision that the tape had been demanding for months, the damage was done. The season was lost. The draft capital was spent. The coaching staff had been through the trauma of trying to make an impossible situation work. And Denver paid Russell Wilson to leave. The Cleveland Browns are on that same road right now. They are at the exact moment, the precise, critical, franchise-defining moment, where making the right decision is still possible, where the cost of correction is still manageable, where giving Shedeur Sanders the job he has earned can still be the beginning of something, instead of the belated, embarrassing, too-late acknowledgement of what should have been obvious all along. But every day they delay, every dropped pass they allow to muddy the narrative, every carefully managed press conference non-answer, every private meeting behind closed doors, every artificially extended competition, every one of those choices moves them further down the Denver road, further toward the moment where the cost of correction is not manageable, further toward the moment where they are paying for a decision they made years ago, while a young quarterback they drafted to save the franchise is somewhere else, thriving, making them look like exactly what they are. Let me paint you a picture of where this ends if the Cleveland Browns front office does not find the courage to make the right call. Picture this. It is 3 years from now. The Cleveland Browns are sitting at the bottom of the AFC North. The quarterback room is in its third or fourth iteration of a failed solution. The fan base has checked out. The stadium is half empty. The national media has written the franchise off as one of the most dysfunctional, most self-sabotaging, most institutionally broken organizations in professional football. And somewhere in that picture, somewhere in that bleak, avoidable, entirely self-inflicted disaster, there is a moment where someone in that front office has to look at the tape from day 13 of training camp in the summer of this year and reckon with the fact that the answer was right there. 13 out of 21 with a touchdown. A 2-minute drive completed. A diving catch by Isaiah Bond. A young man sending everyone home smiling. And they chose organizational self-preservation over football truth. That is the cost. That is the real cost of what is happening right now. Not just the dropped passes. Not just the delayed announcement. Not just the artificially extended competition. The real cost is a franchise that is choosing the comfort of a bad decision over the discomfort of admitting it. And in doing so is burning down its own future to protect its past. The longer Todd Monken and the Cleveland Browns front office keep making these self-sabotaging, institutionally cowardly, financially motivated decisions, the more certain it becomes that this entire regime implodes and takes the franchise down with it. That is not a prediction offered lightly. That is the logical, inevitable destination of the road they are currently on. And Shedeur Sanders deserves so much better than to be the casualty of that journey.
Perfectly thrown ball. And what do Mr. Judy do? Look at this.
They said it, out loud, on the record. They do not know what it is with the Jerry Jeudy situation. It is looking real bad. And they feel like the Cleveland Browns are making it real hard for Shedeur Sanders. That is someone who watches this team every single day, with eyes on every single practice rep, telling you plainly and directly what the pattern looks like from the ground level. Not from a front office suite. Not from behind a carefully crafted press release. From the ground. From the field. From the people who cannot afford to lie to themselves about what they are watching. And that matters. Because the national narrative around Shedeur Sanders has been so thoroughly shaped by people who have an interest in managing it, that the ground-level truth has been consistently, deliberately, infuriatingly drowned out. The people who are actually there, who are actually watching, are seeing something that the organizational spin machine does not want amplified. And what they are seeing is a young quarterback who is winning, being surrounded by conditions that make winning harder than it should be. That is the story. That has always been the story. And it is time for the Cleveland Browns front office to answer for it. Here is what needs to happen. And I want every single person watching this to hear this clearly and carry it into the comments section below. Todd Monken needs to name Shedeur Sanders his starter. Not after the preseason. Not after a carefully managed rotation designed to keep the competition artificially alive. Now, today. Based on the evidence that 13 days of training camp have produced an overwhelming, undeniable abundance. The job belongs to the player who has earned it. And the player who has earned it is Shedeur Sanders. If you believe that the Cleveland Browns front office is failing Shedeur Sanders, if you believe that the dropped passes, the delayed announcements, the organizational noise, and the artificially extended competition represent a failure of leadership that demands accountability, say it in the comments right now. Say it loud. Because the only way this conversation gets louder The only way the pressure on this front office becomes impossible to ignore is if every single one of you makes your voice heard. And I want to ask you one specific question before you go. Which outcome do you believe is more likely? That the Cleveland Browns do the right thing and name Shedeur Sanders their starter based on merit, or that they find a way to extend this competition long enough to justify a decision they have already made for reasons that have nothing to do with football? Tell me what you think. The comments are open. This conversation is not over. This has been NFL Gossip. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell right now, because we are not done with this story, and neither is Shedeur Sanders.
And I said this on the Overreaction Monday, that Monken cannot look everybody in that locker room in the eye and say we're starting somebody else. If the team sees this kid is the guy, if this kid is the leader, if this kid has outplayed and outcompeted Deshaun Watson.
But I don't want to hear the 40-some million dollars. That man got paid 40-some million. It doesn't matter. People get paid money. Look at Russell Wilson, bro. Russell Wilson got paid all of that money by Denver. I don't know what it is with Jerry Jeudy, but this Jerry Jeudy situation is looking real bad, man. I just feel like they're making it real hard for Shedeur to succeed. I just got to be honest, man.